Ken Reid, welcome back to Seeing Other People.
Thank you, Alana. I was very excited to have the invitation to return. Loved our chat last time too. And yeah, super stoked to be back and talk about all things dating advice, the good, the bad, and everything in between.
I already could tell, like before the first time we recorded, I was like, there's so much for us to talk about. And then during our first recording, it was like, yeah, we're going to have to do another. Like we have unfinished business. We have a whole slew of things that we both, I think, feel very similar about, but we need to put our feelings out there. And that's what we're going to do today. So I'm very excited. And I appreciate you so much and your time. For those who may have missed your first episode, guys, pause this, go back to it. It's called Are They Avoidant or Are They an Asshole? And then play this again. But just for those who are less familiar with you, can you just give them the spiel, the Ken lowdown?
Easy. So my name is Ken. I am a counselor here in Sydney, Australia. I help clients to navigate difficult relational experiences, to recover from really bad breakups, to help them become more secure in their attachment style. And most of the content I fixate on at the moment is to help people understand the spectrum of avoidant attachment, particularly the severe end, and how that shows up in dating. Because as we discussed in our last episode,
does it?
I have no idea. Maybe. Who knows? But, when it is showing up, and what a spectacular time to be doing this recording too, because it's, I feel like dating and Halloween verbiage kind of go hand in hand. So with the ghosting and the haunting, there's plenty of room for the dead to rise from their graves when it comes to relationship talk. And I find that, there's a lot of skeletons in people's closets, but I'm not going to labor that analogy too much right now because I know we've got stuff to talk about. But yeah, basically I help people navigate relationships and work on their attachment style.
And we are so grateful for you for the work you do. And guys, Ken is an incredible follow. You have to follow Ken Reid Counseling. Like all of your content just hits home. And I know I said this last time we had you on, but last time I had you on, but you are able to break down really complex topics into very digestible content, and not many people are as good at it as you are. And so thank you for the content you do. Thank you for the work you do. And what we're going to talk about today, speaking of content on social media, there are a lot of people out there who like to put on a dating expert, dating coach, therapist hat who have absolutely no idea what they're talking about. And somewhere along the way in the modern technology, social media world, everyone decided that they know how everyone else should date. And so everyone listening, you guys know there is so much advice out there. And it could get really tricky to figure out what advice should you take? What advice should you ignore? And Ken and I we've talked about this in the past, where we both see all of this dating advice out there that is really frustrating because there's nothing to back it up. And some of it is just straight up horrible advice. And so we have a ton of different pieces of dating advice, popular phrases that have gone viral, and listener submitted pieces of dating advice that we're going to debate and talk about the good, the bad, the ugly. What should you take? What should you leave? And how should you figure out what dating advice is right for you? Let's do it.
So excited. Let's do this. Already in my head, I was thinking of one in particular, but I'll let you start.
It might be the one that I'm going to start with.
Oh, let's see if I'm psychic. Go ahead.
To attract a high value partner, you have to be high value.
It wasn't one I was thinking of, but that's close up there. Oh God. Okay. Okay. I wanted to start out with a little bit of grace and say it kind of makes a little bit of sense in the context of, say, law of attraction, manifestation, if we're going to use those theories, which are also very problematic at times.
Well, I think this is the hard part. Exactly that. Like, some of it can make a little sense, but that doesn't mean it's what you have to live by. Like, it's not the rule. Continue.
Correct. I'm going to use a term, thought-terminating cliche, probably a lot to describe some of these, meaning I think a lot of these pithy statements sound wonderful on paper, but they kind of stop you from really critically thinking about some of these phrases because they're used in they're used to describe things as like a silver bullet to all scenarios when it's like it couldn't be further from the truth. Like some scenarios are like, no, that's not quite accurate with what's going on here too. So okay, so let's talk about the good parts of this, I suppose. Um, High value. I mean, I suppose if you're working on your self worth, let's actually call it that. If you're working on your self worth and your self esteem, and you're working on having boundaries, you're working on your values, you're working on being in alignment, you're learning it, who are the kinds of people that you want to be with in life, from friends, family, loved ones, etc., the kind of jobs that you want, the kind of life you want to create. I think if you're working towards self, like if you're working in the positive sense, if you're working towards like wanting to have a life you want to create for yourself that feels fulfilling, impactful, uplifting, and you're not doing it from a place of fear, depression, anxiety, trauma, then I have found that in my time that it is true. You will likely meet more like-minded individuals who have very similar values and belief systems to yourself. That's generally how a lot of societal stuff works. So yes, I think to one extent that is true. The issue I have with high value equals high value is not always. And that's a very subjective term, and one that I think is actually kind of insulting at times as well too. It's like, I am high value, like, therefore you must be high value too. It sort of denotes, a quantitative value to us, as if to say, like, you need to be doing this random, arbitrary, subjective stuff to make your life interesting for another person. Like, I'm going to call names now. I've read Matthew Hussey's book on dating that he released 11 years ago. And great, April Fool's Reid. And I think that one of the things that came from that was, I don't know if it was his idea about it. Like, I don't know if he's the original creator of this, doesn't really matter. But the things that he was saying in that were this idea of like, if you're dating, you should be interesting to another partner. Think about all the things you could do to be of interest to the other person. You should be talking about how you're going on golf trips and you're doing all this stuff in the Bahamas. And of course, I'm not quoting this literally from text. This is just what I remember. But I really felt kind of irritated about this because I felt like that is not self-worth building stuff. Like, that's just trying to place your inherent value into the hands of another person to make you seem more attractive. And, that's not really authentic. Like, I mean, if you don't like going to the Bahamas or doing golf, well, then don't do any of those things. Like,
Well, that's also assuming that everyone can afford to do all of those things.
Exactly.
And that if you can't afford it, then you're never going to be high enough value. And, my issue with like the high value concept is, sure, like I understand, yes, if you want to find somebody who's really intellectually curious and loves to read, and you're just going to the skate park every time to meet people, you're not necessarily going to find that type of person that's right for you, versus if you went to a library or if you started taking a class, like that is where you might meet those people. But the high value equals high value thing, like that also puts you in the position of saying, well, all of these other people are below me, they're not,
Yes.
they're less than me. And that might not be true. And maybe the right person for you actually isn't somebody else who is also, doing the manifestation and wearing the things that you're supposed to wear and saying all the right things. Like, I don't consider myself high value. Like, I would never refer to myself as that, but that doesn't mean I don't have so much to offer and that I didn't find the right person for me.
Exactly. And to add to that too, like, I mean, I can still say like I value myself, but I'm not about crafting this image of like perfection about myself, being like, yeah, I just went on a great holiday to a tropical island, but I'm not about bragging about that, being like, oh, look at me, I did this. Doesn't my life look so glossy and amazing? That kind of level of, impression management is really best done by someone who's probably a raging narcissist. And so I just worry that if you're going in that direction of trying to please others based on impression management, you are opening up a can of worms to attract the wrong kind of crowd of people.
Yeah. I think in conclusion, if like work on yourself, like be your best self, but
Yes.
also for your sake. If you, being your best self, making yourself feel good and working on your self-worth, that will improve your life in so many ways. And it may help you find a partner. It might not, but you can't just, make yourself quote unquote high value because it guarantees that you're going to find somebody else who's quote unquote high value.
It's a ridiculous, reductive way of looking at human beings. And I think that
Mm-hmm.
whilst we should take ourselves seriously, we should value ourselves. I think just being like, oh, be high value for the sake of having a high value partner, I think it's got egotism written all over it, and it's very shallow.
We're going to give this one a thumbs down.
I'm gonna give that a double thumbs down.
Double thumbs down. Oh my God. Wait, the video just did a thumbs down. Okay. Love
Even
that.
even the recording agrees with that.
Yeah. Zencaster also disagrees. All right. Next one. If he wanted to, he would.
Oh, fucking hell.
Dun,
God.
dun, dun. Would he, Ken? Would he?
That was the one I thought you were going to start with. Okay. That's right up there with he's just not that into you. And I'm glad you actually used the pronouns he, because I feel like both of those, oh, God, they're laced with misogyny. Okay, so I know, so for the sake of our, very diverse audience, if they wanted to, they would. No, that's not how this works. Not in all cases. There are plenty of things. Like, Alana, let me ask you this. Have you ever had a situation where you wanted to do something, but you just haven't had the means and the resources to do it at the time?
Absolutely. Every day.
Exactly. I want to just not work, and I want to go and live my life and do all kinds of stuff sometimes, too. Doesn't mean I'm going to fucking do it. Like,
I want to buy a house in the suburbs. I can't afford that. I want to move to a 2-bedroom apartment. I might. I also might not.
Exactly. And also, in the context of dating as well, too, this is where things become dangerously overly simplistic. So let's take, this is a great opportunity to bring up a little snippet from last time. I'm going to give a little anecdote. Let's say Jack and Jill, heteronormative example, we're going to run with it. Jack and Jill are dating. Jack and Jill have been getting on really, really well. They've been having a great time. Jack thinks that everything's going well with Jill, but Jill starts to act really cold all of a sudden, and she's going through some difficult times behind the scenes with regards to family and stuff that's happening on the side. She's also got just a very chaotic life at the moment. She's really struggling with life, and she can't really handle it. Well, she's not had a great relationship history and background. Like, a lot of the times she finds it very hard, to feel safe and also to trust others quite easily. And even though she likes Jack, she's scared. She's scared about being hurt. And she's finding it really hard to actually trust and be with this guy. But what Jack's receiving from this is lack of communication, not really being not really getting a lot of transparency in communication. And it might be easy on the surface to be like, oh, well, if she wanted to, she would. But what if Jill has trauma? What if she has a fear of intimacy? What if her fears are superseding her genuine interest in this guy, when even if a part of her knows this guy's fantastic, I really enjoy spending time with him, but something is taking over for her where she's just like, I'm freaking the hell out. Are we really going to say if she wanted to, she would?
Absolutely. This has frustrated me since like the origin of it, however many years ago, when it was such a viral concept. And from the start, I'm like, no, it doesn't add up, because how many, like you said before, like how many times have you wanted to, but didn't for whatever reason? Maybe you can't right now. Maybe you want to, but you're scared. Maybe you want to, but last time you did, you got hurt. And so you're trying to proceed with caution. Maybe you don't know that the other person wants you to, but you would if you knew. So many times people are like, oh, well, I haven't heard from them. They haven't asked me out on another date. Like if they wanted to, they would. It's like, well, if you want to, why don't you? It completely takes away any empowerment.
It also assumes interest from the other person. It assumes that them not, reacting in a very predictable manner means that they're not interested in you. And that's dangerous thinking. That's real anxious attachment thinking. It's this dangerous belief that they have to show up in a very predictable way to make you feel reassured. Yes, a basic level of communication would be wonderful. Maybe in this case, Jill's just not communicating enough and it's really upsetting the Jim. Maybe that's the real issue. As Jack, I am feeling anxious in this dynamic because I'm being under-communicated. That's what I need more of in this particular dynamic. And if Jill can't fulfill that, hey, wonderful. No disrespect to Jill. She's just got her own level of capacity for how much she communicates, and it may just not be right for me. Adios. And Jill, all the best with what you're going through. If you were in a better position, I would love to have dated you, were things more agreeable between us too. And I also think that it's very reductive. Like it just sort of, it's a very dangerous reduction because it really doesn't take into consideration panic and fear in dating. People seem to suddenly forget that our emotions run the ship in these dynamics too. You're starting to fall in love with someone? Of course. Like, this kind of goes to another sort of phrase, not really a dating one. Well, I suppose it is. You know, when people think, oh, love conquers fear. No, it does not. It's always the other way around. Fear will always conquer love in all of these situations because fear is survival, love is secondary.
In the heteronormative example, like if he wanted to, he would. Women often forget that guys get anxious too, and that they get scared too, and that they fear rejection too. I mean, I talk to so many male listeners who, if anything, I actually think they might be more anxious than the women because there's so much pressure on them to always be making the moves and to always be, doing everything in the right way when they don't know necessarily what the right way is because every woman has a different version of what's right to them. And so, we have to just be understanding and patient and realize that everyone has anxieties. Everyone has had their heart broken by one thing or one person or another. And we can't just assume, we can't assume, period. We just can't assume.
No, and some might call us up and now say, "Why aren't you assuming that people have anxiety?" No, because everyone has anxiety to a degree or another. Like, that's just basic human facts. We're creatures who've got survival mechanisms, and that's just how they operate. And I love that you brought up that the point of the heteronormative parts of this too, because I think, and I'll even as a gay man, like I will say that I think a lot of men, particularly my straight clients, have tremendous pressure on themselves too. And I've seen particularly men who identify as stoics, got to tell you, they are the most insecure and anxious people I have ever met, especially in a dating context. Stoicism can often be a bit of a front for, not wanting to tackle some of those raging insecurities inside of oneself. I understand why people do it, and if you subscribe to Stoicism, wonderful. But I have found that it's a bit of a form of self-avoidancy because you want to appear big, strong, and masculine and fit that stereotype. But at the end of the day, you fold like a beachside deck chair whenever there's relational stuff
going on. Yep. All right. So if he wanted to, he would. In conclusion, thumbs down. Okay.
Get rid of that dating advice. It's terrible.
So many people sent this next one in when I posted my question box. You'll find love when you least expect it.
No. Yes and no. You're like, yeah.
Maybe. Sometimes.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, maybe, but I think it can be a bit of an airy-fairy thing, right? It's sort of almost absolves sometimes people of intentionality and actually going out and dating. What do you think?
Yeah, you can't just sit on your couch watching Netflix and assume that your perfect person's going to knock on your door or throw a rock at your window. You can't just...
Wouldn't that be nice?
Yeah, sure, maybe it's when you least expect it because you're coming off of a breakup and you're not expecting to meet somebody because you were thinking you were going to, take some months to just date around or whatever. Sure, that could happen. Or maybe it's I've seen this happen where when you least expect it, you're traveling and so you're not thinking about impressing people or meeting people, and so you're being your silly weird self with your kooky dance moves on the dance floor, and that's attractive to somebody because you're not trying. Sure, in that case, yes, but you have to put effort into dating and into yourself if you want to meet somebody.
Would you agree then that maybe this particular advice would be a real case of the devil is in the detail, meaning that context matters, and this advice is not meant for everyone?
Absolutely. Not meant for everyone and not meant for every situation.
I agree. I couldn't agree more with what you said. I think that if you've just been brokenhearted, you've done some time in therapy, and maybe you're at a point where you're just like, I kind of want to be celibate for a bit. I want to just not date around. I want to just chill. I just want to live my life and actually do my own thing. Now, I can guarantee, this is my belief, that if you're living your life and actually just enjoying life for you, you probably are actually in a much better energy to be drawn to people who are like-minded, very similar to you. Out there in dating apps, you get a smorgasbord of all kinds of people with a range of fun things going on behind the scenes that you aren't always aware about. But when you're doing things that you genuinely love in spaces that you love with people that you enjoy, you stand a higher chance of actually being in a position, I believe, to be attracting, the right kind of folk in.
Yeah, I see it over and over. People are like, I'm going to take a break from dating. And that's when they meet somebody. And it's not because, they're going to find it when they least expect it. It's because they're not putting pressure on every interaction with every person that they're attracted to or every person that could be a potential partner. They're not spending hours a day swiping and hoping that anyone who, is in the same room as them could be their person. They have the mindset of, I'm focused on other things right now. And that taking the pressure off goes such a long way. And that's why it might seem like it happens when people aren't trying. But that doesn't mean that the you can't just like say, okay, I'm not going to try anymore. I'm going to stop dating with the expectation that then you're going to find somebody.
I completely agree. I would add that, it's actually maybe good from the perspective of an abundance mindset. And I'm going to say this particularly to people who want children. I think that whilst it's wonderful, anyone who wants to bring a child onto this planet, like I think it's a great, great gift to be someone who wants to be a caregiver and also to, even if that's not your goal, to be, in a fulfilling relationship. Marriage is your thing too, wonderful. But I think one of the worst disservices you can do is give yourself unnecessary timelines for when it needs to be done. And I think that's where an advice like this, yes or no, we can't, biological clocks, I think I get that. But, for those that are open to the idea of it, there are other ways to have children. And, I think more importantly, trying to rush yourself to have these goals met by a certain time, I think just create more of desperation. And desperation often leads to the worst possible connections in dating.
Oh, yeah. That was me the majority of my early mid 20s. Horrible. Horrible. I look back and I'm like, why did my friends not try and stop me or shake me? And they did.
I think I'm going to say that's one for society to be blamed for, I'd say. I think we've done a great disservice to people, especially women, in terms of giving unnecessary rush. But so in short, I'd say my conclusion for this advice is appropriate where the context is, considerate and justified, but not for everyone.
For sure. All right. We're going to give it a
Mid.
Yeah, thumb to the side. Is that the hitchhiking thumb?
I thought the hitchhiking thumb was when you're
back.
When you go back, like you're standing on the road, it's like, I'm going in this direction. Are you going in this direction?
Oh, that would make sense. Okay. It's just horizontal thumb.
Horizontal thumb for us.
Horizontal thumb. Okay. The best way to get over someone is by getting under someone else.
Do you know my answer to this might actually be a surprise? I'm going to say, again, context matters. If you just come off the back of a dreadful breakup, like say, let's just say someone's ghosted you or you just had an abrupt ending, hard no. Absolutely not. You're still in love with that person. You're bleeding on the couch. Please don't fucking go to, dating and, start talking about your ex and how much you miss them, because that's not appropriate. And also, I've done this. I'll own my own stuff and say, I know what it's like to be heartbroken off the back of a big ending with someone and to be going out and trying to get over them. I felt like shit every time I did that. And all I could think of was how much I missed my ex. At times, weirdly enough, even though we weren't together, I felt like I was betraying my ex, even though we weren't actually together. So in that context, hell no. Not first 2 months after dating, having a major breakup. God, no. But there is a time when I think that self-pity, self-blame, shock, the heat of the emotion has kind of passed. And I actually do think then it becomes essential, because what it will do for you is when you're not thinking, they were my person, they were my everything, it's actually good to get out there and try meeting new people and realize, actually, holy shit, there are some amazing people out there, and it's not always going to be just that was my only person. In fact, there are people who treat me somewhat better. They communicate better. They're hotter even. Mm-hmm. Again, it kind of speaks to what I said with the previous example. It's good for the abundance mindset. There's plenty of people out there. They won't be your only person, but I certainly wouldn't be recommending that to someone who just had a sudden breakup.
I agree with every single word you just said. And I know for me, when I went through some pretty horrible breakups, like, I remember that moment where I first, like, thought someone was attractive or, sat down with somebody for a little while, and it wasn't a date, we just sat down, and then after I was like, "Wait a second, I just spent 30 minutes not thinking about my ex. Holy shit. Like, I might actually be interested in somebody else." Like, those were such helpful feelings in my healing process to realize, like you said, like, there are other people out there. And there's a Taylor Swift song called I Forgot That You Existed. And it's like, for 1 minute, I forgot that you existed. And it really is such an amazing feeling in that healing process. But to going back to the original phrase, like, by to get over someone by getting under someone else, like, you don't have to take it literally. You don't have to sleep with somebody else to get over somebody. It could just be like, okay, see what's out there.
Yeah, and if you do want to
See
sleep with
what's
other
out there.
people, fantastic. But I think
Go
that
for it.
but I think what you just said is bang on accurate, and I love how you tie that in with that Taylor Swift song. I haven't heard that song particularly, but that whole idea of like I wasn't thinking about my ex for 30 minutes, and that's a
Yeah.
really healthy sign. You don't want to be subconsciously projecting your memories and love of your ex onto a new person that you're dating because you're never going to accept the person in front of you.
Yeah. I wanna actually read the lyrics for a second,
Go for it.
because I remember hearing it and I was like, "Oh my god," and I didn't hear the song when I was going through a breakup. I think I was probably, like, a year into my relationship with Jake, and I heard it and I was like, "Oh my god." It goes, "I forgot that you existed, and I thought that it would kill me, but it didn't. It isn't love, it isn't hate, it's just indifference."
Yes.
And then there's one part, where is it? I can't find the rest of it, but it is so true. Like, I know, like, when you first go through a breakup, you don't even want to think about the possibility that you might not think about this person, but it's all gonna be okay. It's a
Yeah,
great song.
that's exactly right. And I love what Taylor Swift. I gotta tell you, Taylor Swift's got some bang on lyrics
Yep.
with dating and relationships, and I think that indifference part is absolutely key. So my vote for this one is again mid,
Horizontal.
horizontal. Again, context matters.
They always come back or their lives get worse.
Um, Again, the devil is in the detail and the context. I think that advice is very appropriate for severely avoidantly attached people and narcissists. Absolutely. But I can tell you, I have not looked back for most of my exes, and I don't even plan on getting back with them. And I can tell you, from an objective standpoint, my life has gotten better. So, you know, it's like, who are we applying this advice to, and for what situations? I'd say that if you're talking about someone who's like mega avoidant, who's just like broken up with you abruptly, and then they come back to you a week, a month, 6 months, a year after the fact, it's true that a lot of them can be miserable, and that I've actually gone on record saying you're more likely to have an avoidant ex reach back out to you if they're not feeling particularly good about their circumstances, they're feeling depressed, they feel like you're an easy person to lean on during that period of time. I know some people say, oh, like, depending on how long you've known them, it might be, if you know them for like years, you've been in a committed relationship with them for a while, they're more likely to come back. No, not necessarily. I think it really depends on where they're at emotionally with themselves and also their own confidence to be able to come back. Because if they're dating someone who also allows them to return and also doesn't have self-esteem, then sure, they may feel more comfortable returning to you because they know they can get away with it. But and the same is also a little bit applicable in the narcissistic example as well too. But honestly, I think I really think some of these people, like I know one of my exes never did. He was as avoidant as they come, and he had plenty of things that were going on that I predict probably meant that he didn't want to return. Like, I mean, from the looks of it, he had many great friends he was hanging out with. His life here in Sydney was looking fantastic. Doesn't mean he was feeling good. But, when you've got coping mechanisms, when you've got good outlets to sort of help yourself move on and get over it, so to speak, or you're diving into a new relationship, then no. The chances are that maybe they've moved forward without looking back in that particular moment. Doesn't mean they won't ever look back. No, but I think that it's case by case.
Yeah. I also think it's important to think about, should they come back? Like, would it be a good thing for you if they come back? Probably not. If they left, it's because something wasn't right. And with time, you'll be able to see that too. I've always thought since the first time I heard this that it's just something that people might tell themselves to feel better about the situation,
Oh, God, yeah.
but you also shouldn't hold out hope that they're going to come back, because that's going to just prolong the healing process so much. So I'm a thumbs down on this one for
All
sure.
right. I was going to say, I'm still horizontal just because
I
I,
accept.
I feel it's case by case, but I do totally agree with what you just said at the end there. This is one that feeds into some delusion and hope that's not healthy.
Yes. Okay, let's do a speed round for the next two. I think there's just too much out there. Like there's too much. Okay.
Do we need a part two of this?
Yeah, like probably part 20. Dating is a numbers game.
Yes and no. If you're treating dating like a sales game, then bad idea, because just like doing door-to-door sales, you could be meeting lots of people, but also they're not the right target audience for you too. That's where it
Boom.
kind of goes back to what we were saying before about self-worth and, working on your own life. I'd say maybe in the early days of dating, sure, to figure out who you like and who you don't, but short, no.
Agreed. It's got to be both. It's got to be intentionality. Like you have to know who you are and know what you want, and be willing to experiment with what you think you want,
Exactly.
and go on a handful of dates, because you could go on 50 first dates, but if you're just going on 50 dates with like an arbitrary group of people that you don't have the same values with, don't have the same goals with, then you're just going on 50 dates. You might have to go on 50 more. Like, you're not supposed to be compatible with everyone you meet, but you have to try, and you have to try intentionally.
Exactly. Like the marketer in me would say, this is a great idea if you're just getting started. But if you're at the stage like you
Yeah.
are, I know you're not dating anyone, but like I know you'll get a relationship. But like if hypothetically speaking, I think people like you and I at our stage, no.
If they're interested, you'll know. If not, you'll be confused.
Ah! I feel like that's up there with if they wanted to, they would, in the same sense that like, how do we like interest is often sometimes shown demonstratively rather than with words sometimes, or other things as well too. Confusion is definitely an important thing you need to think about in certain situations. And if you're confused, I think you would agree, speak up about it if you're confused and discern where that interest is. But again, I feel like this bleeds into assumption territory again. What are your thoughts?
Yes, you're spot on. I think if they're interested, you might know. If you're interested and you don't know if they're interested, ask, communicate, figure it out. Don't just assume like, oh, you're confused, you don't know where they stand, so they're not interested. Like, I do think some situations, if you're so anxious that every single time your phone buzzes, you're staring at it, like hoping that it's going to be them, and you're like, you can't eat, you can't sleep, because all you can think about is like, when am I going to see them again? Are they interested? Are they not? Like, did I mess up that thing I said on the date? Like, how do I properly text this perfectly witty message? Like, that's just not a good situation. So yeah, you're confused because something's not right. It doesn't necessarily mean they're not interested, but the communication's not there. Something is misaligned.
I love what you just said too, because you didn't say they're not right. You said something is not right. And I think the danger of this particular phrase is it assumes they're not right. When it's like, no. Well, let's not go that far just yet. The issue is, assumption is like, it's an assumption issue. We don't know if we're on the same page. Let's get some clarity on that first, and then take it from there.
Yeah. They might have no idea that you are a really big texter, and that, you want to text a lot in between dates. So when they're not texting and you're thinking, oh my God, they hate me, they never want to see me again, that's not, they might really like you. They might be just talking to their friends about how into you they are, and like thinking about how excited they are to see you again. But you might have no idea, and you might assume, oh, well, it's over. Screw them.
Yeah, I completely agree with everything you said. I tell you what, at this rate, I don't feel like we're getting many thumbs up to these bits of...
Shocker there. Okay, here's one that I think, well, let's see. We got a few mixed bags here. Don't put all your eggs in one basket.
Okay, that's actually one I'm a bit more positive on.
Woo!
But it needs context again. Like, I think in the early stages of dating, that's actually got some value to it, on the basis that if you're someone who's prone to limerence, meaning you get a little bit giddy and excited anytime you meet someone new and you think this is the one, I'd say you're probably better off with a little bit of temperance. Go out and date a few other people as well too, just to sort of, don't like commit to all of them, but just like get to know people a bit first before you just invest in one person. So yeah, I am more thumbs up for this one than the others.
I agree. I am right there with you. Okay. You have to love yourself before you can be loved by someone else.
Oh, contentious and spicy.
Mm-hmm.
I think that you need to learn self-respect. I think you need to have boundaries. I think you need to understand your self-worth. But this idea of you need to love yourself before loving someone else, I think it sort of implies this. I mean, look, to me, the way I hear that is this sort of notion of you need to just love everything about you and then someone will love you. It's like, no,
Right.
doesn't quite work that way.
Like you might never you probably won't ever love everything about you in your life. That's unrealistic.
It is unrealistic. I mean, there's parts about me that are unsavory. I mean, I accept them. It doesn't mean I always love them. I think that it can be a bit of a fallacy to assume like you're going to love everything about yourself and therefore you'll love someone else, equally. I think this is a little bit of an airy-fairy one. So it's actually a bit of a thumbs down.
I agree. And it's interesting. I remember feeling so frustrated by this when I was single, when I had such low self-worth, when I was really struggling with like accepting myself. And the first thing you said is exactly what I've learned, what I've come to understand and believe about this is you have to respect yourself before you can be respected by somebody else. Because if you don't respect yourself, you're going to accept the bare minimum. You have to know your worth and exactly what you said, like put up boundaries and know what you want and know what you deserve.
I also want to say too, and this is the theme I've been exploring personally and also with some of my clients, sometimes you have to be something quite savage. And not everyone likes hearing that. I think there's no prizes for being a nice person, a virtuous wallflower. I know a lot of us are very scared to come across as being assertive because it comes with the connotation of you being difficult. Too bad. In this day and age, you actually sometimes need to be putting up with, you need to be actually respectful enough of yourself to sometimes be difficult to other people because if you're not, you'll be walked all over.
Absolutely. All right. So we're going to give this one
thumbs down.
Thumbs down. Concept with some edits. Yes.
With some edits, it's a thumbs up. With
yes,
as it is
currently, you don't have to love yourself before you can be loved by someone else.
It needs a lot of unpacking and a lot of context before I'm willing to turn that to a thumbs up.
Aligned. Boom. Okay. This was another big one that probably like 15 people sent in. When you know, you know.
No. That's a thumbs
when
down.
When you know, no, you don't know.
That is a thumbs down to like the bottom of the planet's core. Anytime I have heard someone say, oh, when you know, I'm like, are you codependent? Maybe that's a bit too harsh for me. I'm like, are you limerent? Are you being, in a bit of a honeymoon cycle? Like, just because you have this euphoric feeling of being like, they're so great, they communicate, they do this and that, wonderful. That's how they are today. Now, give that another, round of the sun, a year around the sun, and then come back to me and tell me if you really feel like this is the one. And not because they won't be, but because you do not know. I think that a lot of people hold on to those limerent feelings and think, oh, if I feel this way, it absolutely means truth. No, it doesn't. It's just excitement. Listen, love a bit of excitement. I love, the butterflies every now and then too. But if I'm completely honest, like I've learned over time, that butterflies definitely do not always equate to this is my soulmate. In fact, if anything, it's more, that's another round of therapy.
Yes. Agreed. Yeah. I mean, if this were true, then there would have been like 25 people I wanted to marry before marrying Jake. And
I was going to say
yeah, those would have been horrible, horrible situations. There's a reason none of those situations panned out. And with Jake, at first I didn't know. Until I knew. And even when I knew, I was still anxious. I still, had hesitations and questioned things. Unless you're somebody who has no anxiety in the world and who has the clearest head of all and knows exactly what they want and has never been wrong, this can't be true.
No, and it's a really important thing. I want to, I think you would agree with this, is that you've got to be really careful with enthusiasm in the sense that, yes, enthusiasm is a positive emotion. I love it. But you've got to be careful with that because it's not always a metric for certainty. And
Yeah.
I think often at times we get allergic to the bad emotions, anger, anxiety, depression, stress. But it's like just because enthusiasm and excitement don't strike the same connotation of being bad, so to speak, it's still a problematic emotion if you let it take over you and you're going headfirst into a trauma bonded relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. We are definitely giving this one a thumbs down
Thumbs down.
for sure. I, in preparation for this, I did some Redditing
Oh,
and I I just pulled a few things from Reddit. We're not going to go through each of them individually, but I thought they were really interesting. You should present your worst self at the start, not your best.
what? What? Like, what would even be your worst self? Like, like when you're just feeling a bit slothful, when you're exhausted and just like being grumpy and horrible to people. Like, what does that mean?
Yeah. I mean, listen, I agree. You don't have to be perfect. Like, you should be yourself, but I don't present your worst self. Ladies, if you really like him, make him wait 3 months.
Is that sort of one of those ones where it's that whole thing of like, if you really like him, wait for an arbitrary period of time before getting him to kiss you, before getting him to sleep with you? Is it sort of in that category?
Yeah.
Um, as a guy, I tried that and it wasn't necessarily a metric for success. I would say that, and the reason being, if you're dating an avoidant and you get to that point where at 3 months you finally kiss and have sex together, that might be the moment they shut down and deactivate and back off from you completely. That advice, I think, is born from anxiety. It's this thing of, like, I need to control the dynamic to not get hurt. That's dangerous. If you're in recovery, I don't see any danger in applying that if you're having it as like a bit of a boundary thing. You're like, look, I want to take 3 months to get to know you and just to sort of wait and see before we escalate things any further. I got nothing wrong with that in theory if you're going about it not from fear, but you're going about it from a place of, I know myself, I know I get limerent if I sleep with someone on the first date. I know I get like giddy and go into gaga land if I, escalate things too quickly. So I'm setting this as a bit of a boundary more for myself than for you, in which case, yeah, that's fine. But you've got to...
Yeah, versus a test to like make sure they, are giving into the game you're playing, and because that just builds pressure.
Yes. So I'd say this is a horizontal thumbs for me on the basis that I'd be like, where is this coming from? Because as you said, if it's coming from fear, bad idea. If it's coming from intentionality and boundaries, yeah, go for it.
If you're asking about it on Reddit, it's probably a no.
I'm actually going to say yes. Like, I
agree.
Like, I have to say, like, anytime I've caught myself being like Googling something or, being like, I'm like, what? Like, that's the answer in and of itself. Something like,
if you have to ask ChatGPT, if you have to ask Reddit, if you have to ask 20 friends, you know the answer already.
And you're probably just looking for confirmation because you don't necessarily trust yourself in that situation. And that's fine. We all go through a bit of a phase. That hard thumbs up for me on that one. That's actually very true.
Yep, I agree. There's obviously a million more we could do, but I think the biggest takeaway is for all of these, we said maybe it depends. Like, context is so important in every situation, and that's why we can't just jump to abide by arbitrary statements, rules, phrases that we see on social media. It doesn't matter if your favorite influencer or actress is talking about it. It might not apply to you, and maybe it worked for them. That doesn't mean it's going to work for you and your situation that you're going through.
Exactly. And a great example of that would be Sabrina Zohar talks about this a lot on her podcast as well too. She talks about pace and saying how, like, I got with my boyfriend on the first night and, as everything was hunky-dory since then. And I wouldn't always recommend that for a lot of people on the basis that, intensity in the beginning of dating is often a sign, in my opinion, of two people who are quite emotionally dysregulated, and it doesn't always mean it's going to be a functional relationship, or at least not the kind of relationship
Mhm.
that maybe I think I want to entertain. I could be wrong, but everyone's different, and
Mhm.
everyone's got a different idea of what they want and what works for them. So, to Sabrina's credit, it worked for her. And I think what I like about her messaging around that is I just think that we need to be very careful when holding on to these rules of dating. Oh, like another one, don't double text. Sometimes I've got to be honest, I've double text because I need answers. And I'm like, can we hash this out, please? I don't like if you're doing double, triple, quadruple texting and it's out of control, that's a different story. But again, context matters.
Yeah. If Jake didn't follow up when I didn't respond to him on Hinge, we would not be married. Thank God he tried and didn't listen to arbitrary dating rules. Woo!
Yeah.
Go Jake.
Could you imagine if you're like, could you imagine like your life would be so different right now?
If he was like, oh, well, like on social media, it says I can't double text and she didn't respond to me. So she hates
Clearly,
me.
she's not that into me.
We hadn't met. I didn't know him. I did not know him. What advice do you have for anyone listening when it comes to finding dating advice that works for them?
It's going to be unconventional, but I think that you almost need to go through the experiences of dating, get your heart broken, actually go through this, get a bit of an education on psychology. You don't need a PhD, but just get a better understanding of mental health and how people show up and form your own opinion and understanding of people. Because I think we go into this with so much crap knowledge, and it's actually really good to go out and dating and actually figure out more of this stuff yourself. I don't know about you, Lana. Like, I feel like I've learned every time I've dated someone, I've learned so much about myself.
So much.
Like, I'd actually say your greatest gift is just date and just figure it out for yourself. And over time, you'll figure out the truths from the fiction. And I think you'll get to a place where you feel like you can actually grow your inner confidence around this. And you probably end up realizing that who you were when you started dating is so radically different from who you are today and the kind of people
Oh,
that you
yeah.
want to entertain. Hell, like, I mean, we come with a lot of other changes outside of, partner selection too. So I'd say, in a nutshell, just date. Just go on out there and actually learn more about yourself, because the more you learn about yourself, I guarantee you'll learn more about the kind of people you want to
Period. I couldn't have said it better. I wholeheartedly agree and think you're completely spot on. Ken, this has been such a treat. I cannot thank you enough for coming on Seeing Other People, not just once, but twice. I have no doubt this is not the end of our little mini series, but I really appreciate you so much from across the world joining us. Where can everybody find you?
Well, firstly, thank you. I loved doing this this morning. This was so much fun. I don't always get to talk about dating advice, but this was great. Yeah, I can be found on Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, but if you really, and also on Spotify, I have a podcast now. But if you really want to connect and see what I'm up to, definitely Instagram. I'm at kenreid.co. So that's KENFinelli.REID.co. And if you're interested in working with me, I'm fully booked at the moment for like a year. And
Doesn't surprise me.
you can work with one of my team members. Like, they're all fantastic at what they do, and they're really, really good. And I've got a few other offerings coming up soon. But that's where you can find me.
Amazing. I will have that all linked in the show notes. Ken, thank you so, so, so much. And to everyone listening, DM us. Let us know what other dating pieces of dating advice you absolutely hate or dating advice you love. We would love to hear from you. And I will talk to you guys next time.